The Missouri Sunshine Law provides that members of the City Council, when not physically present in council chambers, can participate and vote on all matters when an emergency exists, and the nature of the emergency is stated in the minutes. So once again, we would ask that the minutes reflect that we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic, that the City Council is meeting remotely for their own safety, as well as the public health and safety of all the residents and attendees.
Thank you, John. First order of business is approval of our February 25th work session minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We've got a motion, a second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next order of business is going to be some discussion from Mark. Obviously, after what happened in Texas, a lot of people in a lot of places are concerned about that happening anywhere else. And obviously we have that same, not concern, but we have our own electric department, which makes us a little different. So I know there was an article in the Webster Kirkwood Times last week, but I talked to Russ last week and thought it'd be a good idea maybe to have Mark talk to us a little bit about, maybe what happened down there and how our circumstances might be different, and hopefully that would never happen here. So Russ, you have anything before we go to Mark?
No, I really don't. I think Mark can cover it from here.
All right. Go ahead, Mark. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks. No problem. No problem. And I appreciate the opportunity. Actually, Russ and I had been thinking about this, and I think it's important to go over this so that everybody does feel comfortable with what we do versus how things go in Texas. So with that, I want to start out with some three basic things that I think can help you to understand what happened and how we're different. The first is this notion that Texas is a grid all by itself, one state that has an interconnection grid system. We are part of a grid that is comprised of all of the states in the Midwest, starting from Michigan and Wisconsin, coming down south through Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, of course, Missouri, Illinois, going down through south to Arkansas and even Louisiana. And our connections, our interconnections for power supply for our grid also go east and west to Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, even east to Virginia and west to what we call SPP, and out toward the west with the Southwest Power Pool that is comprised of Oklahoma. Part of it is when you have all of those states as part of a grid versus one single state, you have a lot more resources and choices for resources in the event there is a situation, a problem, a weather event, etc., compared to the Texas situation where they were only able to really rely upon themselves, what resources were available in the state of Texas, and the limited amount of import capacity that was set up between them also hurt them. So again, one state versus many. Clearly, the concept of having many states as part of a grid is advantageous and prevents a lot of these things from happening. And don't forget, when you have a lot of states involved, you also have different climates and you have different situations. So where one is feeling something and weather event, some other kind of natural disaster, et cetera, or other things of that nature, the others may not. And that helps for the supply to come from different places. The next thing, the next basic thing that is a major difference between what we do in our region and what has gone on or what goes on in Texas is the fuel situation. You got to think about this for yourself for a minute. Texas is dominated by the gas situation. Gas is the fuel of choice for Texas for generating electricity. It also happens to be the fuel of choice for heat as well. And boy, I tell you what, when you're having a grab at that same supply all at the same time for heat and electricity, it's going to cause you a lot of problems. When you don't have diversification of fuels, you got a problem. Now, our grid has all of these resources available to us, in particular, coal. And the mix that we have available to us gives us a lot of opportunities in the case of having some interesting situations. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, just so you understand a little bit more about how the gas game caused the problem. Now, again, gas was in short supply with a high demand during that time period. Gas prices multiplied by 100 times in individual hours. Now, there are other instances where gas actually multiplied by 1,000 times. Gas is deregulated. There are no market constraints associated with gas trading. If you think about the Wall Street stock market, there are stop valves or things that can take place, like when GameStop's getting traded at a crazy amount, right? And they can halt or suspend the activity associated with those transactions. This is not the case in the gas market. So what you saw in the gas market situation is you saw a very high escalation of prices. And I will tell you, and you haven't heard a lot about this, but when there is an escalation of pricing, there are generators that decide not to transact. We call it financial curtailment. Again, you haven't heard a lot about that, but you will. We are a group, the American Public Power Association, together with the Missouri Public Utility Alliance, that has solicited our senators and representatives to help to get this investigated. And they have followed through on our request to get that help. We also requested through our American Public Power Association that gas trading be suspended during the event. That actually was something that would have had to been done at the presidential level. We did not get assistance for that currently, but through the investigation, I believe we're going to be able to see some relief for some high bills that were incurred during this situation. Our hourly transaction bill for that week was 10 times the amount, from 77,000 to $800,000 during that week, because the gas price related to gas generation costs that again related to pricing on an hourly basis throughout the entire grid system, including the Midwest system. So we have some concerns that we voiced, and it's going to be interesting to hear about gas and gas escalation. And again, because we were able to use our coal during this event, we were able to hedge against the gas generation transactions. If you recall, I had talked about selling power during that time period. We buy power and we sell power, and we buy and sell at the same price during that time period. It's a hedge, a protection against the escalation of hourly prices. The hourly prices caused by gas were hedged by our hourly sales that we were doing by coal from the Prairie State plant. That's unique to Kirkwood, but not necessarily unique to the Midwest region or the folks in the Missouri Public Utility Alliance who are part of those assets, the many assets that we have that are coal. Plum Point, Iatan, again, these are cities that have plants and their facilities, Prairie State, et cetera. But long short of it is, one fuel causes you problems. Anytime you have one fuel, it causes you problems. And in particular, with Texas, they had decided long ago that they felt like they could use gas primarily as their generation fuel for their system. And that's not something that's normally done in the business or normally decided upon, but they did make that decision, and it has now caused them some significant problems. It'll be interesting to see what they want to do about that in the future. So again, now we got one state, we got one fuel. Now I'm going to talk about one other thing, and that's one regulatory body. The ERCOT Texas grid is actually governed by the state legislature. They have a commission, but the commission is really governed by rules that are passed by the state legislature. That's a very strange setup. All the other grid systems in the East, in the Midwest, in the West, they are all governed by utility professionals, a board of utility professionals. And those boards receive input and work closely with the multiple state public service commissions that are comprised of their grid, with appointed individuals that work in those commissions. But there is no legislator control of any of the other grids except for Texas. The real issue that presents is operating criteria. Now, I will tell you, having been in a plant, operated a plant, purchased fuel, done turbine overhauls, changed out pumps, and decided and made decisions on when equipment gets worked on and how it gets worked on. These decisions are done by operating criteria. It's a machine. So you look at a turbine, for example, and you know how many hours it's operated, and after so many operating hours, you take that equipment down and you work on it. You don't decide that it's not a good idea to take it down because you might not make any money that month. That's a bad thing. If you start doing that, then your car won't work and you can't get to work. Right? I mean, that's the analogy. You can't make decisions that are not based on operating criteria. The machine is just not going to cooperate with those decisions. Well, we have a lot of different rules. There's a lot of rules that we have that are associated with when you take equipment down, when you bring it up, when you make sure that it's operational. We call it resource adequacy. We only allow in our grid so many pieces of equipment to be taken down during the winter. We only allow so many pieces of equipment to be taken down during the summer. We know that you have to plan those events, and we make you file operating data associated with when those types of things occur. That is not the case in Texas. In Texas, you get to just decide what you want to do. And you can do that based on all kinds of different criteria. And I don't want to suggest that some of them are nefarious criteria, but the idea is there's a danger when you don't have rules and guidelines that are based on operating characteristics. That's the difference between the grids in the other parts of the country and the Texas grid. So when you hear things like people saying, well, some of the equipment wasn't winterized, or some of the equipment wasn't working at the time, or they haven't talked about this yet, but you will hear this, which you will hear like, well, a lot of equipment was down because people were working on the winter because they thought they were going to make money in the summer, and they wanted the equipment to be ready for the summer and didn't really care a lot about the winter because prices are lower in the winter. All of those are decisions that are monitored by the governing body associated with the grid in our areas and should have been monitored more closely in Texas, and it was not. So more will come out about their resource adequacy and the lack thereof and some of the decision making associated with the planning. But the big takeaway is governance. How is the grid governed in Texas? Very differently than the grid and the governance of the grid in the other regions. And because of that, operational criteria isn't necessarily the main decision-making criteria for Texas, where it is in the other places. So that's why we had power available during that time period, because we wanted to always make sure that we had coal and gas available during the winter. And this is not the first time that there's been a polar vortex. If you recall, just over the last few years, we've always had winter events. So when we sit in those meetings, and we are in those meetings, I know it's hard to imagine, but we are represented in each one of those meetings as part of the Midwest grid meetings. There's a lot of them. We're there. Our equipment is there and talked about, and we are talking specifically along the lines of, is it operational? Is it going to be ready? When can you take it down? When is it going to be up? So, for example, both the Prairie State units were up during this time period. Whereas a lot of other people would have said, hey, you should have taken one of those units down and gotten them ready for the summer. Why didn't you do this? Well, we kind of know what we're doing. So we have a schedule for operating equipment, and our schedule is more based on operating criteria. Again, bottom line, governance. So again, you have three big reasons why this would not happen in our region. One, we're bigger in the places or the amount of places that we can go to get power. Two, we have a portfolio of fuels, so we're not relying on one fuel. And then, of course, lastly, our governance is based on operational criteria. And, because of that, we're able to keep the lights on as our first priority. And quite frankly, we think about money as a secondary issue. So I guess I'd like to really give you time to ask questions because I know, I mean, when I do this stuff, I've been doing this since 1985. I've been part of the rules of the game. I've been in the plant. I've been able to experience this whole thing from top to bottom. And so to some degree, for many of us, this has been intuitively obvious in terms of what's happened. Again, the other thing is it's not being discussed in the media, on television, or in some of these other forums in a way that really exposes the market activity and how the market operates. Some of that is political. I mean, quite frankly, one side doesn't want to accuse one other side, or one side that's on the same side doesn't want to accuse their friendly other side about market manipulation, market rules, and what they've allowed to occur. So over time, when you get into the FERC hearings, you're going to hear more about that, and it's going to be discussed more like a math problem instead of a political problem. And I liken that to people saying stuff like blaming renewables, which is it's totally inaccurate. Renewable energy is rarely operational in the Texas grid. Less than 10% capacity is associated with the Texas grid, partly because the gas people don't want renewable energy working in the Texas grid. I mean, that's what they've done in order to try to protect the dominant fuel that is a revenue source for them. So, those kinds of arguments, those kinds of discussions, those cover up market manipulation with gas prices and the deregulation associated with gas prices and what that can cause for financial curtailment. It'll be interesting as time goes on to see those investigations and to see how they go down this road of trying to provide some relief to customers because market prices exceeded the price associated with the cost to extract that fuel and to deliver that fuel. Be quite interesting. So again, with that, I'd rather hear from questions, and maybe I'll, to answer some of the questions and help you to give, others that have questions, some explanations about kind of what's happened.
Well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Quick question. We used to talk about it a lot, but MISO, is that the network you're kind of talking about?
Absolutely. It is.
What is it? Mid-continent something.
Yes, it's a mid-continent independent system operator, we call it, which is really comprised of all of the generators in all of those states, that Michigan and Wisconsin, Ohio, and we all send our generation in through that system. And then that generation electricity is delivered through that system along the transmission line. So yeah, that's the grid, MISO.
Okay. Questions from council? Let us look at my screen. Mark, anything?
No, Mark, thanks for the explanation. I think it was pretty clear, especially your point in making that because they don't have a diverse source of energy, when everybody went for the gas all at the same time, that's when the prices went up. So, so good explanation, and I'm certainly glad that that didn't happen here, and hopefully they'll improve their system down there. Thank you.
Thanks. Liz, anything for Mark?
I just, I think we all need to appreciate coal, and coal's kind of, got a bad rap over the last, I don't know how many years. And it's really an important fuel source for us. We only have, I think, one coal operating plant left in Missouri. And Mark, tell me, isn't it really clean now? I mean, it's not the source of bad air like it used to be.
Yes, there's a couple of things that you should know. There are more. This is more than one coal. I mean, our Plum Point facility is one, for example. But yes, the pendulum politically has kind of gone back and forth recently. So in today's conversations about legislation and regulations, coal is a target for certain. Uh, but renewable energy is not ready to supply the grid completely, and neither is gas. And so in our conversations with Joe Manchin, who's now the chair of the Energy Committee from West Virginia, the Democrat from West Virginia, you can just imagine where some protection now will come from. And there'll be this discussion about a transition from where we are with the different fuel sources to different types of fuel sources that'll have cleaner air. And with regards to the air standards, certainly our Prairie State facility is one of the cleanest, but we have new technology we call electrostatic precipitators and other types of things that have made it cleaner than it's ever been. And the older equipment that doesn't really meet price criteria is already retired. And the market has taken care to do that. If you're a higher priced, older unit that's inefficient and dirtier, by definition, you're not going to move your power in the market before the other cheaper, efficient units. And so people are making their decisions to do those retirements on their own through the market. And the legislative activity now, from a political standpoint, and you know, a desire to do some things more rapidly with a timetable, it's marrying up with the retirements that are really going to take place, the ones that we always knew were going to take place. If anything, there was some delay in the retirements over the last 4 years because there was some uncertainty about the regulatory environment and whether or not there was going to be an opportunity to refurbish some of that older equipment and keep it running. But it was still at a juncture where the price point meant that the older equipment was going to move on. So I think, you know, in general, the pendulum, again, swings back and forth with these things. But what we're going to see is in the Senate, you're going to see some reasonable conversations about a transition, and not 2035, as you hear from some of the conversations. That was a starting point for the negotiation, but probably 2040 and 2050. And if you remember, even the debt situation associated with existing plants is going to cause the timetable for existing coal facilities and their retirements to be pushed out so that the debt can be retired. So again, I mean, I think that there's a lot of talk on both sides. Typically in the Washington game, it is extreme. It's like that on television. But when we get to the point of actually having legislation and coming up with rules, I think we're going to see more reasonable regulations that are going to come to the middle on this thing and have a more smoother, all of the above strategy to using different type of fuels with our generation mix, instead of saying we're going to be all renewable or no coal or one or the other. I think we're going to have some reasonable plans about using all of the above strategies, and then we'll meet up with the financial situations that people are experiencing, and we'll also meet with the reliability issues that we're experiencing. And remember, the other thing that we often remind people about the different sources is the physics involved, right? Certainly the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all the time. It's clear. We know that the penetration of those intermittent sources has always been 10 to 15% in the market because of that. We can't store energy. We've talked about battery storage, but we don't have it today. And even in a situation where we've done some new gas findings and exploration, we don't have pipelines that go to those locations to even extract that gas and to bring it to a gas facility for generation. We just haven't had generation placed where we have new findings, and we don't have pipelines, and we don't have transmission lines. So the physics associated with trying to make a transition to different generation sources means that the timetable has to be pushed out. So it can't occur as fast as people want, but when you hear Washington speak, you're hearing negotiations, so that when the time frame comes up for transition into new fuel sources, it's going to end up being like our pledge, somewhere near 2045, 2050, as opposed to 2035 for trying to be carbon neutral.
Anything else, Liz? Okay, Wallace.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. It's always good to hear from you. Always very positive. I want to kind of take a look at some things in a couple of different ways. One, I like the idea that we have the hive mentality for our grid in the Midwest, so that there's a lot of protection in that structure. But as I look at what will be increasingly severe storm occurrences, there are some inherent weaknesses in that grid, in the distribution, because those distribution lines can come down. They're all above ground on towers and can come down, and that can be a major disruption for us if a large enough area of those gets taken down. So I want to think about, how do we harden ourselves against those kinds of events, if it's possible at all? And then on a more micro level, how do we harden ourselves within Kirkwood? Let's assume that Ameren can keep pushing power down to 12 kV lines, but we've had a major event that took out a large swath through Kirkwood. How are we set to plan to prevent, or at least minimize the impact of those kinds of events?
So that's two things. So the first thing is, on the grid level, MISO looks at that type of reliability, right? That's, we were talking about before in terms of operational criteria. And they have a formula and an application process for transmission line construction. Right now it is overhead, and it is in multiple locations, so that they can have the reliability, and it's less expensive than underground currently. And believe me, as you have seen, or maybe are aware of, even as most recently as the House Bill was it? I think it was 722 or 270. Purchasing property rights to do transmission, both overhead and underground, is difficult for everybody involved. So even when we talk about new transmission and trying to get more reliable transmission, we're certainly seeing that the utility status associated with that is allowing people to do more things than if they don't have it. So long short of it is, MISO does look at the reliability and the transmission lines so that they can build more and have more redundancy and have switching in the case of the loss of an independent line, an individual line. And so back home, we obviously do the same thing. When we talk about our primary overhead lines, we have that set up now so that we have the right, what I call switching points and options to backfeed, so that we can continue to supply power if we have an event that happens in an isolated region. I think that, quite frankly, if we want to start talking about underground for more reliability, we're going to have some significant dollars that we'll need to do that, because underground requires property acquisition. It's going to require right-of-way access that we don't have today. And that by itself is going to be the first difficult obstacle to trying to improve reliability by doing underground. We can certainly continue to do it the way we're doing it with the overhead stuff, and you know, the things that we're doing with modernization of substations, having the right resource adequacy at a substation. For example, we can feed the entire city during the wintertime now with the new Alfred substation. I mean, that's what you do when you try to make sure that you have choices in the case that you have a catastrophic event. But in order to do underground for those types of things, it's going to be construction of a grid that is more robust than we have today, including more easements. And you know, to get those easements, we're going to have a difficult time with the acquisition associated with those easements with the property owners. That's happened on the federal level. That's happened at the state level. And, you know, and we see that now with our Clean Line Greenbelt project. And that's certainly going to happen at Kirkwood's level. We see that just when we try to do traffic signal projects, or Bill tries to do some other projects where he's trying to do road work. I'm not saying that it can't be done and it can't be discussed, but I think that's just a word of caution if we're going to try to go that route. So the first things that we do are just like MISO does. You know, we try to make sure, like we're doing now with our modernization project, that our overhead lines are with new poles, with new wire, and have multiple switching points. And we try to make sure, again, our substations have adequate capacity so that we can feed one side of town from the other side of town. And we try to make sure that, you know, we have equipment that has been inspected and the load that has been monitored so that we can make sure that the capacity is available to shift that load back and forth. I think those are the low-hanging fruit things that we can do until we can tackle those bigger issues like trying to go underground.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but I guess from my perspective, I think we need to have a community-wide conversation about it so that they can actually have some weigh in on choices. Right now, we're not even having a conversation about it. So it's just an option that I thought, you know, would since you raised it, that would be important for us to have, looking at the long-term future of the city, because we're going to be at a severe disadvantage to those municipalities, which are largely under 50 years old, where most of their subdivisions are underground. But so next I wanted to talk a little bit about that fuel options for us. Coal, you know, I think the idea of clean coal is somewhat up there with the idea of almost pregnant, in that you know, there are things other than just carbon emissions. There are the heavy metals in there. There, you know, mercury, which is, you know, destroying our water network and our seafood and fish, because you can't eat. I don't know where you can eat it over a recommend. There's always a maximum recommendation on eating fish because of the mercury content. So you know, and when we look out in terms of future fuel sources, is nuclear in the game? Given that you know, we used to be, the market was dominated by people who were either in coal or oil. Now they've diversified themselves. They've gotten into a little everything. They've gotten into some solar, renewable, and does nuclear get to come down and be more competitive as they don't fight it?
I don't know about the price quote or coefficient associated with nuclear, but the discussion still continues, right? You still have the Vogtle plant, for example, that, you know, like our folks at GDS are involved in, where that's just been a newly constructed plant. You have the other types of discussions about small nuclear reactors, that as an option for some of the things like at Callaway and what could possibly be done there to do upgrades. So nuclear is on the table. You know, Sam Graves, talked to him today. I mean, as again, Joe Manchin, those folks are in DC and you know, a lot of the IOUs, a lot of the co-ops, they're still talking nuclear as something that can be part of a generation source in the grid. And hydrogen is out there, and it continues to get some discussion and some attention. And I think that you'll see more development with hydrogen, and you'll see people thinking about that as an option. And, hydro is still out there. Don't forget hydro. We have a lot of hydro in the state of Missouri. And I think that as people continue to look at this all of the above strategy, hydro is going to continue to be a player. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, I've been a part of the game where we do studies on our cooling water, and we do reports with the EPA, and we check the temperature of our cooling water at our plant, and we check the species of fish that are associated with the region right by the cooling water. And we send divers down and check the fish and plant fish eggs in certain areas in the region where the cooling water comes out. Sometimes that warm water is good for fish, as you know, if you're a fisherman. So yeah, all of those things are part of this whole discussion about this transition. I still believe that the all of the above strategy is going to work, and yes, I think you're right. People are going to continue to look at these other sources to balance things out. But
And last thing for me, and then I'll let you move on.
Nuclear is still very expensive. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Last thing for me, I'll let you move on to some other folks. Emergency residential generation, power generation. How do we begin to promote folks installing their own residential generators for emergency backup?
We continue to promote it. I think it's an informational thing. I do the Advancing Renewable Conference, and we've had Tesla at the conference. We incentivize battery storage, and I think it's just a conversation we have to continue to have with folks about interconnection options, because it is an option. If you have medicines, if you have need for a respirator, if you have special needs at your home, you should be thinking about backup generation, even if it was from natural gas. So, but as you can see, it comes with a price. But I think that we just need to talk a little bit more about it. The only problem with some of those things, again, is some people can afford it, some people can't. And you get into some of the equity issues about that, the implementation of it. But we don't have the dollars and the rates right now to kind of subsidize the implementation of something like that for homeowners, aside from the batteries type projects that you see. And I think that over time, we're probably going to need to talk a little bit more about that, because it certainly is an option.
We're running short, so we have a few more council members to go through. So Kara, anything?
Yeah, Mark, I'm probably just going to send you an email because I have some questions, but none of them really pertain to the work session at hand. So thank you for all the information.
All right, Maggie.
I don't, Mark, again, and as always, thank you for all you do. You are amazing. Thank you.
We're hanging in there. We're only as good as our last problem, so we'll keep on it.
Thank you very much for this. It's nice to hear the differences. One of the things that I saw in the news was interviews with some homeowners and business owners in Texas who were shocked they're used to getting a $300 bill, and now they got a $7,000 bill. Some stuff like that. So I don't know how that works in Texas, but I just wondered that wouldn't happen here, right? We wouldn't have an immediate pass through of a price increase like that. That would have to be something that a subsequent rate of adjustment would have to take care of. Isn't that right?
That is correct. We don't play the game that way. A couple things to remember. Texas is deregulated at the distribution or retail level. So some people opted to do market transactions directly for their homes. And because they did, the price escalation hit them directly. We do not do that. We are a deregulated state. We have rates that we set. We actually have a rate that has to be approved by council, or in the case of the investor owns or co-ops, a commission. And so you don't see any people on hourly pricing that have immediate volatile or fluctuating hits for their bills.
I think that's what I figured. And I think that's an important protection for the consumer that might have been nervous after seeing what happened in Texas if they saw the same news programs I did. The other thing,
I don't think none of the gas pricing or gas retail sales structure allows for that volatility either, right? So for your home heating bill, you're not going to see that. You're not going to see a big hit. Now, eventually, you will see rate filings where people, different utilities will want compensation for the escalation in prices. And it'll be up to the commission to decide how fast they get compensation. So we'll see. We'll see how fast they want compensation. We'll see how fast they get it. And that is going to happen. It's going to happen from investor-owned utilities on the electric side, and it's going to happen for co-ops, and it's going to happen for gas folks too on the electric side and co-ops. You're going to see that for sure, where compensation is going to be requested. I don't think we need to do that. I mean, we're continuing to look at what we do, but that's why we have an electric fund balance, right? I mean, we've always talked about what is the fund balance for? The fund balance is for protection against market volatility, in addition to collateral that we post for transactions and capital that we do and other things. So yeah, you're right. It's a big fear that you're gonna see play out in other places, in other customer account areas. You're gonna see rate increases and you're gonna see some volatile billings. And it'd be interesting to see how those things play out, but that doesn't happen here.
All right, thank you. Well, Mark, thank you very much. Obviously, as usual, very, very informative, and most of it's over my head, but that's okay because we know we've got you in charge. So we appreciate you coming on and doing this and giving us an explanation that we can share with the citizens. So thank you very much, Mark.
Oh, I'm glad you gave me an opportunity. I'm hoping that it can give everybody the comfort level that, we've got these things under control, we're handling them. Our proper planning prevented some poor performance in this situation. And, we're just going to try to keep doing the same thing. So, any chance that we can be a resource about how these things are going, we're glad to be able to provide that information and do that.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Take care, folks.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Good night, Mark.
All right. Now we'll move on to our next topic, which is MSD Stormwater Watershed Plan. Russ, anything to say before you bring Bill on?
Yeah, I just want to say some of the impetus for this analysis was Ms. Givens, Councilmember Givens, suggested we look into the possibility of a Department of Natural Resources grant called a 319 non-point source grant program grant. And we think that might be something that is possible in the future, but some of the requirements of that are that there has to be an overall watershed study completed. And we contacted MSD, and they said that they would be interested in working with us to do a watershed study, with them actually conducting it and so forth. And we're working to get a scope of services from them to that effect now. So I'm going to let Bill explain some of the ins and outs of that, and how we may partner with MSD in the future, should City Council wish to do so.
Russ, as Russ said, it came about from Councilmember Givens that to look into the 319 grant, which is coming up for a grant cycle right now. When I reached out to a couple consultants and to MSD and to the Department of Natural Resources, found out that basically for us to be eligible for a 319 grant, we have to have something called a 9-element plan, EPA approved 9-element plan that covers the entire watershed, which is the Grand Glaze watershed that encompasses Kirkwood, portions of Valley Park, DePers, and unincorporated St. Louis County. So when I reached out to MSD, I talked to their environmental compliance officer, who was very excited to hear from us, to be honest with you, because they do not have a 9-element plan for the Grand Glaze watershed, but they've been looking for a partner to move forward with that, because part of the 9-element plan is very intense on community support for the plan and setting up committees and things of that nature. So he went and talked to their executive director and has funding approved, and they are currently getting a scope of services to do a 9-element plan. And we probably within the next, I would say 3 weeks or so, we should know who that consultant is and the cost to start that plan. And what MSD is looking for, basically from us, is to be a lead partner in this project. And from what our discussions have been, we don't have a full scope of service, what our responsibilities are, but they were looking at us to pretty much lead the partnership development, to where the city of Kirkwood could reach out to the community, other municipalities, St. Louis County, to create a watershed type of committee. Right now there's these types of committees that are in our Deer Creek watershed and in the Grabwise Creek watershed also, because they both have 9-element plans. But what this plan does is, in my memo, I pointed out the 9 elements of the plan, but basically is determine what contaminants are in the streams right now of Sugar Creek, and then find out what the loading levels are, and then come up with some strategies on how to reduce those load limits of certain sediments, bacteria, and things of that nature, and debris. And then you can apply, once you have an approved EPA 9-element plan, then you can apply for 319 grants to implement those strategies. Okay. And that's, I think, what we head for, is that anytime we can have to be eligible for grant opportunities, then we should open up that door and move forward with that. So that's what we're looking at right now. We don't know if there's going to be any cost to us. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of staff time, because these partnerships sometimes don't cost us, but they're staff time, and it's very intense, because you can look at some of these other watersheds like the Deer Creek. They have a well-formed community organization, and that's something that we're just bringing to the city council, because I'm not sure it's going to be a huge dollar amount for us, if any, but it's going to be a lot of staff time in the coordination of this 9-element plan and creating that watershed committee. So basically that's where it is. I did give a memo just to give you an idea of what non-point source means. Okay, basically it's runoff. Okay, point sources, those are controlled by MSD, and a point source is basically something where it comes right off an industrial site into a creek or something like that. So those are point sources, where this water has a non-point source. It's coming from everybody's yards, the streets, and everything else that just goes downhill. Okay, and so those don't have a well-defined source of origin. I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past when we were talking stormwater control in the Sugar Creek water basin, in the aspect of Walker Lake. I think there's improvements we can do to Walker Lake to help sediment and some bacteria, and get it through a 319 grant. Some of the other things through the 319 grant we have is funding of residents creating rain gardens in their yard to help filter stormwater from their yards. And also there's programs about fertilizing. Fertilizers from yards degrades the oxygen levels and things of that nature in the streams. So you want to, have, public education about using more green infrastructure for your yards and things of that nature. So there's a variety of strategies, but none of them are available to us yet. Unless we get a 319 grant, then we can use those grant funds to implement these types of projects. So I think that's our ultimate goal, is to get the 9-element plan approved so we have these opportunities. So I think that's about what I have.
Great. Thank you, Bill. I'm gonna start with Liz, since it was your inquiry that started this. So I'll let you go first.
I guess the only thing that I wonder about is the committee. Is it chaired by a citizen? And if that's the case, if we find the right person, could that not take some of the time away from that might be on the staff?
I think that it'll be vetted through the process. Okay, I doubt if it's going to be a single person. It's usually made up of multiple people. But I think there's going to be representation from all the main stakeholders. It could be somebody, MSD will have a stakeholder, the county will be involved, and other municipalities and ourselves.
That's all.
Bob.
I'm a bit confused because I knew that we were in in Deer Creek watershed. Our whole town is. I don't know. The Grand Glaze. Is it a sub thing of Grand Glaze or something? Because
no, we are only a portion of the city is in the Deer Creek watershed. And a portion of the city is in the Gravois watershed, and a portion is in the Grand Glaze watershed, okay? And so basically, go ahead, Bob.
The Deer Creek Watershed Committee, or whatever their group is, the map they have is much bigger than Kirkwood, and Kirkwood's right in the middle of it. So that's what's confusing to me, because Ladue is in it also, and some other, all in the Deer Creek watershed, and I didn't see another one overlapping.
Right, the Deer Creek.
If I could just interject, I'm on the MSD rate commission, and we've seen all the watershed maps. And what they do sometimes with these watershed maps is they show the cities that they impact, but it doesn't show the actual the limits. And the limits of the Deer Creek watershed only impact the northeast section of Kirkwood. The southeast section of Kirkwood is in Gravois, and the western section of Kirkwood is in the Sugar Creek, which is part of Grand Glaze. So the actual watersheds, there's a split, a three-way split that's in the city of Kirkwood, where the high point basically is near downtown. And you go northeast, you're in Deer Creek. You go southwest, you're in Gravois, and you go west, and you're in Sugar Creek.
Yeah, I figured it was my confusion, but the maps are confusing.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I've seen 1,000 of them that MSD produces, and they can be.
Right. Anything else, Bob? Maggie?
For right now, I don't. I'm cooking on some, but for right now, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Kara?
Yeah, so it's kind of like Bob's confusion. You mentioned Sugar Creek was kind of like the starting point for this, but essentially the grant and the whole program would encompass all of Kirkwood, correct?
No, this program would only encompass what's within the Sugar Creek watershed.
Okay, so to that point, we're looking at reducing the chemicals that are in runoff. We want to clean that up. Will it, I'm assuming then that would mean if you live in Sugar Creek, you're going to be restricted on the type of chemicals you can put on your yard through construction, through yard work, whatever. Would we have to make that like a citywide restriction, or would it just be if you're within, is that making any sense?
It does make sense. Okay.
Okay.
It's, we would probably reach out to the Deer Creek watershed and the Gravois watershed committees and organizations, let's call them organizations, and see what they do. Okay. Because each watershed typically has a couple of specific things. Is it fecal matter? Is it sediment? Is it bacteria? What is it? Okay. And they're trying to eliminate. Okay. I would not say that we would come up with, I wouldn't say this, but you can come up with very strict restrictions. Okay. To where you can say no fertilizers within this watershed, but most don't go that deep. Okay.
Okay.
But, we would probably take a look at what each watershed is looking at. We've had very, very little, any type of conversations with the other two watersheds. So we would have to see what their goals are and see how we can assist them in their goals for the folks that were within the Kirkwood city limits.
Okay, thanks. I know I'm probably jumping the gun there, but you're looking at those 9 points, and obviously one of them is, well, how are we going to get to that goal of fertilize, getting rid of the chemicals there? Is then how do we justify singling out 2 or 3 neighborhoods within our city? So that's just kind of what I wanted to make sure I understood. So that's all. Thanks, guys.
Wallace.
I guess I would start with a question about Sugar Creek, because that's probably the highest profile issue that we have. So we have a sanitary problem down there with the sanitary lines, and then we have a stormwater runoff problem down there. How are these approached with this funding scheme that we've developed with MSD?
Well, with MSD, we did have a discussion. Well, actually, we heard a discussion when Brian Holshire was on when they were talking about some of their issues at the last work session. When we were talking to him, we do know that we have sanitary overflows in Sugar Creek due to the infiltration and what they call I&I inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewer system, and they're well aware of that also. They are looking at projects, because that means that those lines there either have to be replaced, rebuilt, or lined to stop that I&I. Okay, and they are under an EPA mandate to have that done within a certain amount of time. And for some, I don't want to.
2039.
2039. Okay, because I wasn't going to say a date, but I knew there was a date out there, and it's quite a ways off. Okay, so our goal would probably be to reduce the things that we have control over, and that's mostly sediment and debris in the creek, okay, and stream bank erosion and things of that nature, because MSD would be the ones that are going to headman the sanitary sewer overflows in Sugar Creek by infrastructure improvements.
Okay, and kind of touching on part of Kara's point was stormwater runoff. Our new ordinance, I got relatively new ordinance, let's call it that. The homeowners in Sugar Creek have some of the most severe geography in the city, and their 1 inch of runoff can develop quite a bit of velocity by the time it comes down either a long driveway or just a long lawn area. Are they going to still be subject to that being triggered, or let's call it reduction of stormwater runoff in that 1 inch first flush, based on triggering for either new occupancy or construction permits on their property? Would that change under this scenario?
it probably does not necessarily have to change. It could change, but any type of increase in impervious surface within the Sugar Creek area based on our current regulation, that's the only time at this time that they have to do anything, is when they increase the impervious area by 1,000 square feet or over 25% of the impervious area. That's the only time right now that they have to do any type of stormwater mitigation.
Okay.
Mark?
Yeah, so according to this, the Grand Glaze watershed also incorporates the Pear Valley Park and parts of unincorporated St. Louis County. So it sounds like we really need, if we're going to be effective in covering the entire watershed, we're going to have to partner with these other areas. So if we do that, who actually would apply for the grant? Would it be this
MSD.
people?
The MSD, the organization that's for the 9-element plan, MSD would work to do the 9-element plan to get it approved by MoDNR and EPA. Okay.
Okay.
Then anybody within that watershed is eligible to apply for a 319 grant. Each city can do it themselves. The city of Kirkwood would take a look at doing 319 grants to meet the goals of the 9-element plan. Okay, so every city and the county then would be eligible to apply for 319 grants.
And hopefully we would have all of these people involved, De Pear and Valley Park, because if we do our part and yet things aren't changed in the other part of that watershed, it still might affect Kirkwood. So hopefully they will get on board with this and want to partner with us, so we can get this moving forward.
Right, I totally agree. It's going to take a multitude of people, but I will say, one of the good things is that Sugar Creek is predominantly in Kirkwood. Okay, it's just a lower Sugar Creek that's outside of our city limits. So as a city, we have a huge impact on the Sugar Creek water shed.
Great, thanks, Bill.
That's fine. Russ, Bill, are you looking for any action from council tonight other than just giving us information to make sure we're on board with, kind of you're pursuing this, knowing we're waiting on MSD?
Not really looking for action, Mayor. We just wanted council to be aware of this, that we're working with MSD to attempt to partner with them to make this happen.
Okay. All right. And obviously when you hear from them, you'll be back with us. Any other council comments or questions on this evening? All right, seeing now. Well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Thank you, Liz, for your inquiry. Do we have any other business we need to take care of at this work session? All right. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned, and ask everybody to come back about 6:50 for the regular meeting. Thank you.
All this week, we've been spotlighting local restaurants that are the heartbeat of their communities. And today, we head to St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, it's a great spot. It's a very special cafe that opened its doors to give individuals with special needs a place to thrive and learn special skills.
All right, so should we take a trip to the Pioneer Bakery Cafe? Let's go.
So what just happened? We just came in and it was so awesome right now. I am so excited. I got a job!
You got a job.
Last October, 23-year-old Derek Baker scored the job of a lifetime.
I still have that memory in my head.
Derek got a job.
Okay, Mom.
We walked in that morning and walked out with a job and did a dance in the car, didn't we? It was so exciting.
The moment was captured for Derek's TikTok, Baker Banter, that he and his sisters launched while in quarantine.
People enjoy just watching us be ourselves and being able to tell those quick little blurps of stories that are just little moments in our world.
It's been a wild ride for me.
And in a year, Derek has gotten over 2 million followers who get a glimpse into his world.
I am so happy.
At home.
Hey, Bacon Man, we are making apple pie.
In the car.
Having my first day at the bakery was awesome.
Or at the Pioneer Bakery Cafe in Kirkwood, Missouri, where Derek now works.
Let's have a great day at the Pioneer.
But the road here took a lot of hard work and perseverance.
It's pretty overwhelming when you have an adult child with a disability and they get out of the school system. The key is having employers who have the patience and the understanding and the desire to help adults with disabilities.
That's when Derek's mom, Valerie, discovered the collaboration between Pioneer Bakery Cafe and the Step Up program, established through Lafayette Industries, a social enterprise that employs adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in St. Louis.
In the classroom, and we're learning those social skills that everybody needs, whether you have a disability or not. And then we go to Pioneer, where the students basically intern and they're able to display those skills.
Derek, who has Down syndrome, is one of 12 trainees, part of this inaugural class, taking place over the course of a year or two.
Derek has such an amazing personality. He's literally larger than life. I thought he had such advocacy skills and such self-awareness that he would be awesome for this program.
Changed my life. I really love that.
At a time when a lot of restaurants were closing, Scott Reinenberger instead decided to open the doors to Pioneer on October 1st, 2020.
The concept of the Pioneer Bakery Cafe here actually was inspired by two family friends, both with children who had different special needs. And once services were done for them, the question was, what now? What's next?
So even with the hardships of indoor dining restrictions, the program pivoted to provide the stage for trainees to test out the skills they were learning in the classroom.
It's just beautiful seeing it in action. And when the trainees are here, the whole space just gets energetic and electrifying.
It's really about the people opening their arms, understanding that differences aren't always bad, and allowing other, people who maybe are a little bit different into their world and seeing the value that they bring.
And it is a love of life that Derek brings every single day.
You bring joy to people. I got recognized 2 times.
Watching them come in, get their aprons on and get ready, it's incredible. I'm humbled by seeing and watching the whole program work.
They don't just employ people with disabilities. They are training people with disabilities to be the best version of themselves.
And I'm really thankful that having Pioneer is really amazing.
Oh, and look who is here, the owner of Pioneer Bakery Cafe, Scott Reinenberger, along with the awesome Derek Baker. Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Morning. Well, first of all, can we say thank you?
Oh, your cookies. Look what we have, Derek.
Look what we got. Derek, did you make these for us?
We did.
By the way, they're totally tasty, Derek. Derek, what's your favorite part about working there at Pioneer Bakery?
I honestly think Pioneer Bakery is the best in the best. The reason I say that because Pioneer always be different.
You know what? You are an awesome guy. And Scott, you could have just said, we can't, I'm sorry, I'm eating your cookie. We can't do this. There's a pandemic. We need to push it back. Why was it so important for you to get the doors open as soon as possible?
The project was well in its planning phase for a long time. And, we were waiting to find the right time. And it looked like there wasn't going to be the best time. So we just decided to go for it in the fall and get the program going, because if we lost time, that's irreplaceable. And for Derek and others, we're all going to have an opportunity here coming up for employment. And so we just thought push forward.
Scott, I don't know if you realize, but I think a lot of people are coming to the bakery because of Derek.
Yes.
One of our PAs here named Sydney said, you got to do a story on Derek. He's amazing. I saw him on TikTok. Are you noticing people coming in and saying, there he is, there's Derek?
Derek definitely has a fan club, and we're getting emails from all over the United States reaching out to Derek. So it's exciting for the bakery to have this exposure thanks to Derek and his family.
Yeah. Well, Derek, we like surprises around here, so we have one for you and for Scott, okay? Thanks to Bounty, we want to support the Pioneer Bakery Cafe with a donation of $10,000 to continue more opportunities for young adults in your kitchen and in your entire community.
Hats off to Pioneer Bakery. We thank you guys. Thank you for the cookies. And we also have a special cake y'all made.
We'll be eating
pie.
that.
We're going to eat that too in the commercial.
Derek,
you guys,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye, guys.
sending y'all love. To find out more about Pioneer Cafe, head to today.com/food.
All right.
All this week, we've been spotlighting local restaurants that are the heartbeat of their communities. And today, we head to St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, it's a great spot. It's a very special cafe that opened its doors to give individuals with special needs a place to thrive and learn special skills.
All right, so should we take a trip to the Pioneer Bakery Cafe? Let's go.
So what just happened? We just came to interview it. It was so awesome right now. I am so excited. I got a job!
You got a job.
Last October, 23-year-old Derek Baker scored the job of a lifetime.
I still have that memory in my head.
Derek got a job.
Okay, Mom.
We walked in that morning and walked out with the job and did a dance in the car, didn't we? It was so exciting.
The moment was captured for Derek's TikTok, Baker Banter, that he and his sisters launched while in quarantine.
People enjoy just watching us be ourselves and being able to tell those quick little blurps of stories that are just little moments in our world.
It's been a wild ride for me.
And in a year, Derek has gotten over 2 million followers who get a glimpse into his world.
I am so happy.
At home.
Hey, Baker Banter, we are making apple pie.
In the car.
Having my first day at the bakery was awesome.
Or at the Pioneer Bakery Cafe in Kirkwood, Missouri, where Derek now works.
Let's have a great day at the Pioneer.
But the road here took a lot of hard work and perseverance.
It's pretty overwhelming when you have an adult child with a disability and they get out of the school system. The key is having employers who have the patience and the understanding and the desire to help adults with disabilities.
That's when Derek's mom, Valerie, discovered the collaboration between Pioneer Bakery Cafe and the Step Up program, established through Lafayette Industries, a social enterprise that employs adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in St. Louis.
In the classroom, and we're learning those social skills that everybody needs, whether you have a disability or not. And then we go to Pioneer, where the students basically intern and they're able to display those skills.
Derek, who has Down syndrome, is one of 12 trainees, part of this inaugural class, taking place over the course of a year or two.
Derek has such an amazing personality. He's literally larger than life. I thought he had such advocacy skills and such self-awareness that he would be awesome for this program.
Changed my life. I really love that.
At a time when a lot of restaurants were closing, Scott Reinenberger instead decided to open the doors to Pioneer on October 1st, 2020.
The concept of the Pioneer Bakery Cafe here actually was inspired by two family friends, both with children who had different special needs. And once services were done for them, the question was, what now? What's next?
So even with the hardships of indoor dining restrictions, the program pivoted to provide the stage for trainees to test out the skills they were learning in the classroom.
It's just beautiful seeing it in action. And when the trainees are here, the whole space just gets energetic and electrifying.
It's really about the people opening their arms, understanding that differences aren't always bad, and allowing other, people who maybe are a little bit different into their world and seeing the value that they bring.
And it is a love of life that Derek brings every single day.
You bring joy to people. I got recognized 2 times.
Watching them come in, get their aprons on and get ready, it's incredible. I'm humbled by seeing and watching the whole program work.
They don't just employ people with disabilities. They are training people with disabilities to be the best version of themselves.
And I'm really thankful that having Pioneer is really amazing.
Oh, and look who is here, the owner of Pioneer Bakery Cafe, Scott Reinenberger, along with the awesome Derek Baker. Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Morning. Well, first of all, can we say thank you?
Oh, your cookies. Look what we have, Derek.
Look what we got, Derek. Did you make these for us?
We did.
By the way, they're totally tasty, Derek. Derek, what's your favorite part about working there at Pioneer Bakery?
I honestly think Pioneer Bakery is the best in the best. Reason I say that because Pioneer always treated it for me.
You know what? You are an awesome guy. And Scott, you could have just said, we can't, I'm sorry, I'm eating your cookie. We can't do this. There's a pandemic. We need to push it back. Why was it so important for you to get the doors open as soon as possible?
The project was well in its planning phase for a long time, and we were waiting to find the right time, and it looked like there wasn't going to be the best time, so we just decided to go for it in the fall and get the program going, because if we lost time, that's irreplaceable, and for Derek and others, we're all going to have an opportunity here coming up for employment, and so we just thought push forward.
Scott, I don't know if you realize, but I think a lot of people are coming to the bakery because of Derek. Yes. One of our PAs here named Sydney said, you got to do a story on Derek. He's amazing. I saw him on TikTok. Are you noticing people coming in and saying, there he is, there's Derek?
Derek definitely has a fan club, and we're getting emails from all over the United States reaching out to Derek. So it's exciting for the bakery to have this exposure thanks to Derek and his family.
Yeah. Well, Derek, we like surprises around here, so we have one for you and for Scott, okay? Thanks to Bounty, we want to support the Pioneer Bakery Cafe with a donation of $10,000 to continue more opportunities for young adults in your kitchen and in your entire community.
Hats off to Pioneer Bakery. We thank you guys. Thank you for the cookies, and we also have a special cake y'all made.
We'll be eating
pie.
that.
We're going to eat that too in the commercial.
Derek,
you guys,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Still rocking.
All right,
bye, guys.
Y'all love. To find out more about Pioneer Cafe, head to today.com/food.
All right.
All this
Call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Sears is currently absent. Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Wirtz.
Here.
And I see that Councilmember Sears just joined.
He's here. Okay, very good.
Here.
Now I'd ask City Attorney John Hessel to read into the minutes a statement on the Sunshine Law and meeting remotely.
Will do, Mayor. Section 610.015 of the Missouri Sunshine Law provides that members of the City Council are not physically present in council chambers can participate and vote on all matters when an emergency exists and the nature of the emergency is stated in the minutes. So I'd ask the minutes to again reflect that we are still in this pandemic known as COVID-19, and the City Council is meeting for their own safety as well as the public safety of all the residents and attendees.
Great. Thank you very much. John, we have one presentation tonight, and if we could allow our two guests into the Zoom meeting, that would be great. Hello, Rob. I see Bill is.
Hello, Mayor and City Council.
Hello, Bill.
Mr. Mayor, how are you doing? Thank you for inviting us tonight.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We're glad you could join us. We have with us Bill Florent, who is the board chair for Lafayette Industries, as well as Rob Libera, who is the CEO and executive director. Last week, had the pleasure of going to the Pioneer Cafe, where Lafayette Industries and Pioneer have a program together, Step Up, and presented a proclamation, which I'll read here in a minute. At the same time, I know many people probably saw on the Today Show yesterday. If not, please look it up, where one of Lafayette Industries employees, Derek Baker, put on a nice show for the country. It was really, really neat. Rob or Bill, do you want to say anything about that? You were closer to it than we are.
Well, it was a great plug. It actually talked about we're here in Kirkwood, Missouri, and that was all over the Today Show. And we actually chose Kirkwood in conjunction with Scott Reniger, who owns Old McCarthy as Pioneer, because Kirkwood is a great community, very receptive for people with disabilities to live and work and to socialize. And so there couldn't be a better epicenter for this new movement. And it was really just a great day that shed a light on Kirkwood itself and on our program. Would you agree, Bill? Well, I would agree. And again, a little bit biased since I do live in Kirkwood. But it is a very welcoming, very inclusive community. There are other businesses that employ people with developmental disabilities. And as Tim said, March is Disability Awareness Month. And we were very proud of Derek and, in the Pioneer Cafe, what they've done, not only, for Kirkwood, but we have a class of 12 individuals who are going through a learning, series of learning programs and interning there at the cafe to learn how to work, in that type of environment. It's been enlightening.
Good. So what I'll do now is read the proclamation. I think, Rob, you have at least one, if not both, of the actual proclamations.
Yes, sir. Sure
okay.
do. Thank you very much.
No, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and read it if everyone will bear with me. But I found that Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month was designated by President Reagan back in 1987. So it's something that's been around for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, March 2021. Whereas people with developmental disabilities are of all racial, ethnic, educational, social, and economic backgrounds, and society values all people with developmental disabilities. Lafayette Industries is a sheltered workshop that a group of caring parents founded in 1976 to provide employment opportunities for their grown children in order to enhance those persons' self-worth and dignity through employment. Starting with just 16 employees doing packaging for area businesses, is now an organization operating at 2 locations in Manchester, Missouri and Berkeley, Missouri, with a total of 411 employees. Providing meaningful employment opportunities to individuals with developmental disabilities and other disabilities continues to be vital to enabling those individuals to enjoy the rights of citizenship and to participate in communities throughout the St. Louis metropolitan area. Lafayette Industries employs numerous residents of Kirkwood and has several Kirkwood residents serving as directors on its board. Lafayette Industries, in partnership with the Pioneer Cafe, has chosen Kirkwood to launch a new employment initiative for persons with developmental disabilities called Step Up, which has been nationally recognized for its unique social and technical employment skills training. Therefore, to recognize the many accomplishments of individuals with developmental disabilities and other disabilities, and to recognize Lafayette Industries in providing a variety of meaningful employment opportunities to those individuals, I, Timothy E. Griffin, Mayor, and the City Council of Kirkwood do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. We encourage all citizens to support individuals with developmental disabilities and other disabilities, and to support Lafayette Industries in providing meaningful employment opportunities to those individuals. And thank you, Rob, and thank you, Bill, for not just doing this, bringing it to our attention, but being such a big part of the community. I think what you do is incredible, and now bringing it to Kirkwood with Pioneer Cafe is just a wonderful thing, and we thank you for all. We just thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would also just say, for those of you who have not been to the Pioneer Cafe, it really is an awesome place. You can go in, now, and as things open up more, it'll be a very welcoming place. And you can experience yourself, these individuals who are learning, how to work in that environment. It's very rewarding. I appreciate your assistance and all your support here in Kirkwood.
Thank you, Bill. All right, thank you, Rob, both.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. All right, no public hearings. We'll go on to public comments.
Yes, the public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the City Council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the City Council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the City Council to the Chief Administrative Officer or City Clerk if action is needed. If there's anyone wishing to make a public comment, if you would please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
We have anyone with a hand up, Freddie?
There are no hands raised.
All right. I know our city clerk, Laurie, has a comment that a citizen would like her to read. So.
Yes, Your Honor. I received an email today from Michael Carmody at 352 Wingrove Road, asking me to read the following. Kirkwood Road MoDOT project. When will a City Council directive be addressed? Kirkwood Road between I-44 and BNSF railroad tracks, a 10-foot wide multi-use path. The projected project cost, 916.9. Kirkwood's cost based on a 80-20% federal grant would be 183.3. A letter of support would be forthcoming from GRG and MoDOT for Kirkwood's 80-20% federal grant application fund. Said multi-use path on the western side of Kirkwood Road, starting at Highway I-44 going north on Kirkwood Road past Big Bend, to the BNSF railroad tracks. The 2,550 foot area of road between I-44 and Big Bend has the highest pedestrian crash cluster in Kirkwood. Missouri PedNet Coalition stated this multi-use path fits the Vision Zero strategy and criteria. To miss this opportunity to demonstrate a genuine public commitment to Vision Zero would be unfortunate. State policy, page 10 of the Kirkwood Bike Plan. In 2011, the state of Missouri adopted a complete streets resolution. Accordingly, the Missouri Department of Transportation, MoDOT, actively worked to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian facilities into projects. Municipalities can partner with MoDOT to improve biking and walking access during routine maintenance of MoDOT facilities by showing demand and a plan to enhance connectivity for biking and walking throughout the community. MoDOT operates the following surface streets within Kirkwood: Manchester Road, North Kirkwood Road / Lindbergh Road. Kirkwood's bike plan defers MoDOT maintain roads to the above. Kirkwood Bike Plan, page 13, the city code requires bicyclists to use paths adjacent to streets or highways when they have been officially designated. This multi-use path follows the recommended Kirkwood pedestrian walk plan route and moves forward connectivity to Grants Trail. The Kirkwood Comprehensive Plan calls for making our city more walkable and bikeable. The proposed multi-use path addresses this. And that is all that is written, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. All right, with that, we will move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, a motion is second. Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right. We will go to unfinished business, Bill 10867.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance reappropriating $30,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund balance to the Feasibility Studies account, project number EN 2001, for the Vision Zero Action Plan.
All right. Any questions or comments? All right. Councilmember Wertz.
Yeah, Mayor, I've come to the I've come to the conclusion that that the full amount of this at $150,000, $155,000 is probably an expenditure that we shouldn't make at this point. In looking at Vision Zero and what we have to look at for our complete streets, I don't see the technical complexity there that would warrant this kind of expenditure. I would rather see us allocate a portion somewhat smaller of this for professional development on the staff and let them implement a program that we could then approve. We've done some of that promotion with Council Member Dewey. We've invested in her getting some exposure to plans, and I think doing something similar with the staff would be more responsible.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wertz.
Okay. Mine's written up so I don't forget anything. So I know it's been about a year and a half since really the street subcommittee presented this to everyone. So I wanted to kind of remind everyone what this involves with and how we got here. We met with not just technical staff, but staff from police department, parks department, kind of over encompassing, because that's what this is. This encompasses our city as a whole. And we looked at the data and we decided that Vision Zero was the ambitious and solid framework that we were kind of looking for when it came to safe usage and design of our streets. It focuses on equity, engagement, and education, which is really what we were looking for to go hand in hand with the engineering aspect. This proposal plan would include data analysis, public outreach through marketing, education, project demonstrations, policy development, and training for our staff. The end goal of this would be not just zero fatalities or serious injuries on our street, but also creating a process and a long-term plan to ensure that we have streets that's safe and accessible for all users. I stand by the decision to put this on hold, but I think it's time to get back at it. We have more people than ever biking, walking, and socializing on our streets. So to invest in such a plan that's not going to educate those people, promote better engineering for those people, but also do in a way that is data driven and gets all of our departments involved in the city, as well as residents themselves, which has been a huge component that we've been missing up until this point. I also hope with Vision Zero, we as a council will stop piecemealing solutions in a way that isn't done in accordance with our bike and ped plan, our strategic plan, or done without direct input from our residents and city stakeholders. I'm someone that I enjoy biking and walking in our community. And I also really love finding creative ways to improve equity in our community. So this has been a really good outlet and passion for me. And yet the past few months, I've found myself fatigued and just really burnt out on how much we are micromanaging and piecemealing these things together without cohesive goals, without cohesive metrics to provide not only to our staff, but to our residents as a whole. I think if we were to enact this, this goes beyond just improving the engineering of our streets. We are, like I mentioned, creating that action plan that's going to make us a pretty big deal in the region when it comes to equity and safer streets. And I think it is an investment worth making. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments or questions? Let's see, Councilmember Sears. I got you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm fully behind the project. I'm with Wallace though on so many times we have, usually it's proper to hire a consultant. I think we just have to be careful about when we do, and whether it's really necessary or whether those funds could be spent partially on training some staff if that's needed, but a lot of times it's not even needed. And then putting it into the project itself, into the product that you're looking for in the end. I wasn't around when you all did this before. I will defer to your choice. I have a question though that follows my thoughts here, and that is, what of the originally budgeted amount has been spent? Is it all the money except this additional amount that's carried over to this budget, or is none of it been spent, or where are we on engaging the firm and having them give us a product?
Russ, you want to answer that?
Yeah, none has been spent of the $155,000 budget. It was held when we had the pandemic and we had to hold some projects.
Okay, then I have a feeling, but I wasn't involved in the discussions, but I have a feeling if I were around back then, I would have questions about whether this part of the investment is important enough to commit those funds to. And that's not to be a reflection on other important things that we need to do to get the goals in place and the goals actually met.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dewey.
Thank you. This morning I turned left from Geyer onto Kirkwood Road. Immediately there was a guy on a bike on the north shoulder, no helmet. I wanted to turn right into Deb Lavender's parking lot, but he turned right in front of me, and then went left across the entrance. While he was doing all this, I sat in the right-hand lane of Manchester at a standstill, and luckily was not rear-ended. And I thought to myself, this is why it's time. There was a prime example of someone who could use some definite education. It's time for an overall plan. It's time to make a commitment to Vision Zero and Alta. Their plans are very well researched, thoughtful, equitable, educational, community inclusive, and well engineered. I urge us tonight to further our journey toward safer streets in an organized manner for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments or questions? All right. Councilmember Gibbons.
You're muted, Liz.
You're muted.
Sorry. Sorry, I thought I had unmuted. And maybe Councilmember Wertz could answer this. I've heard a lot about education, but does this actually give us a plan for the streets? That's something I don't understand. And I do have this big packet now of Vision Zero, so I will read that, but.
Yeah, so this includes a policy creation. So it would include policy that would pull in all the things that would give basically council the ability to give staff that framework for the streets. Then the education and project development that also is kind of not just the over-encompassing plan, but it, like, for instance, let's say that raised crosswalk on Doherty Ferry Peak. What we could do is, before that's even put up, we have these consultants go out and basically build it in a way where it would mimic it. And that way neighbors would get to see what it would actually be like to have that there, what walkers would be able to actually experience what those types of changes would be like. So we could actually have that opportunity to show it to the neighbors and see if it actually works before we make those changes. So it basically does provide a better way, I think, of doing this than just looking at this intersection. This gives us the ability to work cohesively as a city and with also like MoDOT and who are some, like the county, you know, all of those covered roads, that covers that as well. And that kind of gives us then a basis to push back when we want certain things that they don't.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, any other council? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin?
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons?
Yes.
Councilmember Sears?
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey?
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward?
No.
Councilmember Wertz?
Yes.
All right, bill passes second reading. Bill 10868.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance adopting and approving the operating and capital budgets for the fiscal year April 1, 2021 through March 31, 2022, and appropriating such sums as are set forth herein for all departments and the accounts therein specified for all expenditures of the city of such year, which appropriations total $90,265,872. Capital projects of $9,910,820, appropriating the sum of $201,050 for payment of principal for Performing Arts Center interfund loan from the general fund, and reappropriating $9,543,223 for previously approved projects that will be incomplete as of March 31, 2021.
Right. Is there a motion for first reading approval?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on first reading of the bill? All right. Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, the major problem I have with this proposal and this budget is that it is lacking in a long-term recognition of our capital needs. And the idea that we're going to continue to create second-class streets, you know, the staff and the administration at this point are, and fairness is a big thing to me, I guess, because of my life experiences. But we are picking hundreds of winners and losers each year with our street project. Well, you know, some streets are being completely rebuilt, and they're going to be brand new and great. Other streets are going to be brought to a third-class level, and there's no plan to get them past that third-class level. At our current pace, you wouldn't expect anybody to be back if you were so lucky to be chosen as a third-class street for 20 years. I think that's unnecessary. I think it's unfair, and as a resident of the community, I think it's unhealthy for our long-term viability.
All right. Any other council comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no.
No.
All right, bill passes first reading. Bill 10869.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance approving the budget of the Special Business District for the fiscal year April 1, 2021 through March 31, 2022.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any questions or comments on the SPD budget? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, bill passes first reading. Bill 10870.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission STP Urban Program Agreement for the awarded Surface Transportation Program STP 5502612 for the Lindeman Road Improvement Project.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any questions or comments? All right, Councilmember Gibbons.
So we just decided that we are going to spend $155,000 on Vision Zero, and yet in here we are have a bill that has buffered bike lanes. I think this should be laid over until Vision Zero and the people that we've just hired to give us recommendations have a chance to look at this.
Russ, or do you want to address that? My guess is it may be, and I may be wrong, I'm just guessing, too late to do that at this point.
I'll let Bill, he tracks the scheduling on these, but I believe that if we want to get this programmed and so forth, we have to enter into a participation agreement, and that's what we're talking about here. So go ahead, Bill.
Correct. When we submitted our application, we put in our own time frame, and we have to stay with our time frame or lose the funding for this project. So that's basically what it is, that we laid out a time frame when we submitted the application, and depending on how long of a layover this is, we would not be able to accomplish our time frame and lose funding for this project potentially.
So what is the time frame?
The time frame is basically we're going into the program agreement, then we'll develop an RFQ and go into design. And then we have a year for design, a year for right-of-way acquisition, and then we would probably start construction in the summer, spring of 2024 was when construction would go in.
So the program agreement is due when?
When's the program agreement due?
Yes.
It's due at the end of March is when that's why we're in front of the city council now. That meets our programming schedule right now, is get a program agreement approved in March, so we can move on through our RFQ process to hire a consultant to start the design work.
Well, I have a real problem with buffered bike lanes. I think we should have the consultant look at this. I know you said that the one person that you contacted would be $250,000 for protected bike lanes, but that's one way of doing it. There's a lot of different ways of doing protected bike lanes. And, maybe it can't be protected all the way the length of it, but it certainly can for some of it. And I think we're missing an opportunity to get our consultant involved quickly.
Well, the consultant, when we go through the RFQ process, this will be part of it, and pedestrian improvements will be part of the scope of services also. So we will be hiring a consultant to evaluate our pedestrian needs and locations, and we can include the bicycle lanes also as if buffered or unbuffered, and have them do the evaluation. And it would go through a public process also, because we will have them develop concept plans, and then we will get public input before we move to final design.
So would the Vision Zero consultant be involved with this?
Not necessarily, because each consultant we hire typically has a pedestrian specific team member that is into does pedestrian access things. I mean, we're doing right now. We are going to have an RFQ for West Essex, and the consultant that's been selected for that, it was because of their heavy input and knowledge of bicycles and pedestrian improvements.
Okay.
So Bill, if we want this money, I mean, it's too late. I mean, you have to say yes. Does that mean though that there cannot be design changes after this? Because obviously we haven't gone into.
Correct. We haven't gone into design, so we still have the opportunity to put buffered lanes in, or protected lanes. We still have that opportunity.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Do we have any other council comments or questions on this? Council member, let's see, go down my list. Council member Dewey.
Just to say that I shared Councilmember Gibbons' concerns. I'm glad to hear that we still have input on it. And, you know, there's some things to work out after this vote, not the one, but the vote we just did, and hiring Alta. That's it.
Any other council members? Thought I saw a hand. Councilmember Wertz.
So obviously part of what we just passed with Vision Zero would include policy. I mean, if we pass the policy that makes it required that we look at that buffered bike lane, would that be applied to the design if it's passed before the design part happens? Or because we applied for it, it would be grandfathered in?
Let me be clear on this. When we do design, we can certainly incorporate wherever we are in our decision-making process, as long as council appropriates funds to do it. As long as it hasn't been fully designed, I mean, if we're at the beginning of the design process, we can alter what the participation agreement, as long as it runs with the consistency of the participation agreement. There's a bike lane and there are pedestrian improvements and so forth. How we accomplish those bike lanes and pedestrian improvements is really to be determined through the design process. Is that not true, Bill?
That's correct.
Yeah. So council can take a look at it over the next year, because we're not going to design for the next year or so. Is that correct?
No, we will probably start designing within the next 6 months.
Okay, next 6 months. Sorry, 6 months. So we can certainly discuss and have some input from the Vision Zero consultant if, you know, if there's interest there.
Perfect.
We should have the consultant on board within the next 6 months.
Okay, because I think, yeah, I just wanted to throw support for that. So, okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Gibbons.
If we take the word buffered out of there so that we're not, I mean, does that tie us to, can we just say bike lanes and then it can change?
The application is the application. The application has buffered in there and it's already been approved.
So messing with the application now may not be good, but it doesn't mean it can't change the design. So, Councilmember Ward, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, because words are important. I heard can, but I didn't hear shall or will in the implementation of that ideology. So can we get that from Russ or from Bill, that we shall or will entertain other bike options?
I think that really the shall and the will should come from council, not from staff.
Okay, do you need that at this point?
If you all feel it's appropriate, I mean, I said we could take a look at that. If I didn't hear council say we shouldn't, so you know, we can certainly do that.
I'd be more comfortable if we did get consensus that we shall do that rather than.
Yeah, just take that, Russ, as council wants you to do that.
Okay, no problem. We will look into that.
Good.
All right. Anything else on this first reading of this bill? All right. Seeing that all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. All right, bill passes first reading. Bill 10871.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission STP Urban Program Agreement for the awarded Surface Transportation Program STP 5502-611 for the North Kirkwood Road Improvement Project.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
For a second? We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this bill? I see Councilmember Gibbons.
I'm kind of raising my hand sheepishly. I was really shocked to see that in this bill is a pedestrian hyper beacon somewhere between Washington and Essex. And I went back to the proposed site improvement plan from Altus, in which they are going to put in an hawk beacon across Kirkwood Road. So I'm confused why it's in here and why we're spending money on it.
Me too.
Bill, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, when we put our application together, we put the PHB, the hawk, in there because we had no confidence that the project, the Alta project, was going to be approved. So we can now tell you that as we go through this process, that might not be the city's cost and at that with this project. But without putting it in our grant application, we would not have been able to move forward with that PHB. So we covered our bases basically to make sure that the PHB went in either at our cost or at the developer's cost.
I don't know, that just, so in other words, you were working with Altus to make sure it was in there? I don't know. I don't understand that. Well, I wasn't around when this was applied for. How long ago was that applied for?
Oh, this was probably, I want to say a year ago or 2 years ago. A year ago, it was applied for.
Yes, it was applied in 2020.
Right.
In 2020.
Right.
So there was already some talk going on about the redevelopment of the UMB site.
Yeah, there was probably
correct?
There was probably some early discussions going on at that time, but the staff is the one that identified placing a PHB somewhere between Washington and Essex for a future pedestrian crossing.
The staff identified that, even though Altus put it in their plan that they were going to add it.
At the staff's request, it was added to their plan.
I would say that.
Yeah, hold on one second. Hold on 1 second. All right. So let's go back on this. So we did this in 2020, and this is the location where we approved the redevelopment of where UMB is. So just so this was done though before we approved that, but you wanted, because of knowledge of what potentially could happen there, you wanted that in the grant application. Is that what you're saying, Bill?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And now now Bill's saying that if we pass this, the developer is going to be paying for it. It's not going to be coming out of the grant. Is that correct?
Correct. Depending on the development and if it was approved with that, we would make that a part of the developer's requirements. And we would remove that from our grant application. We would not put that as part of our design.
Councilmember Sears.
Yeah, and I would just say there are times when a project does not go forward. And so this way the beacon will go in either if there's no Altus development that materializes, it would be covered and we'd be putting it in through this application. But if the Altus project does go through, then they take care of it.
Correct.
We have any other council comments? Councilmember Dewey.
And is that stated that if it goes through, they do the hawk? If it doesn't go through, then obviously we do it. Is that stated?
Well,
or are we just assuming that?
No, in the planning and zoning recommendations that was approved by the city council, it includes the hawk.
I know.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Well, if it's they're required to do it. If it's part of the approval process, they have.
Yeah.
So John, you're shaking your head.
No, you're absolutely right. It's part of the approval process. So it will be done by the developer.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
All right. I saw another hand, Councilmember Ward, I think.
Yeah, well, a question for John. Worst case scenario, they would be reimbursing us whatever outlay is either under the matching grant or whatever full cost is, correct?
Right, assuming it goes forward. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of things council has approved over the decades that don't go forward with the development for whatever reasons. So this is just another example of we had a provision in there where the city would do it as part of this grant if there's a developer, and now we made that obligation part of the development.
Okay.
So then if we weren't successful with the grant application, they would still be obligated at full cost. So either way, we get it done.
Yep.
All right. Any other council comments or questions on this bill? All right. Seeing none, all in favor of the first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right. Bill passes first reading. Resolution 14, 2021.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution of the City of Kirkwood, Missouri, calling for the joint establishment of a citywide transportation development district, authorizing the City of Kirkwood, Missouri to join with the Downtown Kirkwood Special Business District in a petition to create the Kirkwood Citywide Transportation Development District and authorizing certain actions related thereto.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
I move.
We've got a motion and a second. I'll just make a few comments. It's not often that we say when there's a tax increase being proposed or even a sales tax that we're excited, but I for one, I think most of the council is very excited about the possibilities of what's going to happen here. Streets have been the number one priority of citizens for many, many years. And though we have greatly improved what we've done the last few years, it's not what we want to do in the long term. One of the biggest things has been a funding source for how to pay for it. And through a lot of work by staff, by John Hessel and his law firm, along with the SBD, the city and SBD have worked together and would like to form a TDD, a Transportation Development District, for the city of Kirkwood, which would be a 1% sales tax generated on all purchases in the city of Kirkwood, with benefits of that being for transportation related things such as streets. The city of St. Anne, as far as we know, is the only other city in the area, if not the state, who has a transportation development district. They have teamed with Bi-State to do that. Our thought was to keep the money in Kirkwood, and that's why we've talked to the SBD, and they have approved a similar resolution to get this on the ballot, to start the process of getting it on the ballot in November. It's a long process, and If you read this resolution, you will see that. I don't know if we need to go into all that, but the process will start after this of getting this approved and getting it on the ballot in November. And by doing this, if the voters of Kirkwood approve this, we will have a funding source every year for at least the next 40 years to have ongoing and very good repair and maintenance of streets and other transportation things in the city of Kirkwood. So this is very exciting. A lot more information will come out on this obviously between now and November, but this is where the public is informed of this and we move forward. So have any other council comments or questions on this? Order. Where's my list here? Who has their hands up again, please? All right, Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Although we may not be as excited about the increase here, you can roll back the tape and listen to what I've said before. After looking at the city's budgets for the last 9 years, I can tell you with confidence that our expenses go up each and every year. And we do need to invest in capital projects, as Councilmember Ward had mentioned earlier tonight. We have looked at various options in order to increase the speed with which we repair our streets. And we can continue to do what we're doing, or we can make a bigger impact quicker to raise our overall street grade, which hopefully with this TDD proposal, we can get all of our streets above a B- grade, which would be fantastic. That would satisfy what was mentioned earlier, where a lot of folks haven't gotten their streets fixed because we simply have not had the funds to pay for them, competing with all the other expenses within the city of Kirkwood. And we can either continue to do what we're doing, or we need more revenues to pay for it. And again, we've looked at many options, and this seems like a fair option. It puts us in line with many other municipalities within the St. Louis metropolitan region. Once this increase would go through. And I really think that this will make an impact to get our streets fixed finally in a time frame that will allow us to repair the ones that we have repaired 5 years ago that are going to need repair in the next 5 to 10 years, which started this whole cycle in the first place. So this will help us end this cycle and keep our roads top notch. Thank you.
Other council comments or questions? Councilmember Dewey.
I just wanted to thank John Hessel and staff and John's other compadres at Lewis Rice, and for a job well done. And I love that our partner is the SVD. It was a natural. It was the best this all could have happened. So thank you.
Other council comments? Councilmember Wertz.
I guess I got to unmute myself, huh? Just kind of reiterating what Councilmember Zimmer and Mayor Griffin said, that, you know, the streets have been like on the forefront of everyone's mind. And, you know, when you physically see something outside where you park your car, where you drive to the grocery store, it's an everyday remembrance of why aren't these being fixed? So, you know, when you're talking about tax increases, this is probably one of the few times where residents will actually be able to visibly see that increase make a difference on their daily life. You know, they'll be able to drive to the grocery store without having to hit a pothole or whatnot. I think the fact that we also are passing this or voting on this resolution on the same night that we passed Vision Zero, I think also makes a point that we want this more than just filling potholes and changing the streets. We also want this for the sidewalks, for bicyclists, for improving Grants Trail, for any multimodal way of getting around. This is going to be helping it. And I think that's a really big deal. And it's also a big deal that we're putting it forth. We're saying we're done putting Band-Aids on stuff. Let's get some real money and stuff in this infrastructure. So 10 years from now, when my daughter's learning to drive on these streets, I don't have to worry about it. So I'm looking forward to this. Councilmember Dewey mentioned the special business district. That's a big deal. That's a huge stakeholder in our city. Obviously the Citizens Finance Committee also mentioned it on their annual report this year. So the fact that a group of financial professionals, Kirkwood residents, said you should look into this, it means something. So I hope this just means that Kirkwood's moving away from dodging potholes and towards being a regional leader and kind of safer, more equitable streets. So that's all.
Great. Anything else from the council? Councilmember Steers.
4 things to say. Good idea. Let's vote.
Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, I just want to follow up too. I hope that the community agrees that this funding source will be a great benefit for us, and we will, as Karis used so accurately, stop hitting one pothole at a time. I think we can lay out a near-term plan that will get all of our streets to as high a level as we can. But I do want to caution the council that I have absolutely no faith that using the current scheme that we have in staffing and bidding will get that done. We need to rethink that, think outside of the box, and look at another possibility that would not only accelerate our street repair, but would also do it at reduced costs, which means we can do more streets at that accelerated pace. So I hope we can take that look at it and bring this home for the citizens.
Yeah, this is just really a good thing. Everyone shopping in the entire city of Kirkwood, from wherever they are, will contribute to this. And Councilmember Zimmer said it, that even with this one step, we are just right in the range of where other cities around us are with our sales tax. So this is a great thing, and we need to hopefully the voters will approve this in November. Lots more to come on this. So, any other comments or questions on this resolution? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin?
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons?
Yes.
Councilmember Sears?
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey?
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward?
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz?
Yes.
All right, resolution passes. Any city council reports? Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, just wish a happy birthday to my brother-in-law, Davin.
All right. Councilmember Gibbons.
The Green Tree Committee is postponing till next month, making a decision what's going to happen.
I guess I need to ask, is that the Green Tree, and I asked this, I'm not sure, is that the Green Tree Committee's decision, Russ, or I'm just more curious whether Green Tree happens or not.
In the past year, the city actually made that decision, not the committee.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
But the committee can certainly consider it and let us know what their thoughts are on it.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure, because I thought it was the city, but hopefully they're planning that it's going to occur,
Well, if you make it a mass vaccination event, we can.
There you go.
Boy, wouldn't that be great?
Well, one of the reasons I ran for council was so I can sit on the car in the parade, and I missed one already. There's only 4 chances, and so.
Oh, Bob, we went green. Now we're going to all walk.
There you go. On paths.
Ride bikes.
Bob's shaking his
Ride
head.
bikes, ride bikes on safe streets.
Or golf carts.
Magicians.
All
I want to ride an elephant.
right.
Stinky.
Any other council comments?
Mark
All
a
right.
shovel.
Seeing none, Chief Administrative Officer report.
No report at this time, Mayor.
All right. City Attorney report.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
All right. City Clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor, I have a couple things here. The first one is the report of the March 3rd meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The following action took place. The commission recommended that the framework plan portion of the downtown master plan and parking study be amended according to the recommendation from PGAV planners as revised by the commission, and that the necessary zoning code text amendment to section 25-36 subsection E3 be adopted to achieve the recommendations as referenced in the staff memo dated February 17th, 2021. The second item is a report on the scheduled upcoming public hearings. We will be scheduling the item I just read from the March 3rd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for a public hearing on April 1st, 2021. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Laurie. All right, with that, our next meeting will take place 2 weeks from tonight at 7 p.m. Via Zoom. Seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned. See everybody soon.